Welcome back to the Homestead, guys. So today I wanted to do a little bit of a review on the Kubota tractor. So you've seen this in a lot of our videos. This tractor is about 6.5 years old. This was the first year that Kubota came out with the Tier 4, I think it is, the new emissions-friendly diesel engine with the diesel particulate filter and yada yada yada, does the regen, all of that. Actually, surprisingly, that has not been any issue for us, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is the L3301 by Kubota, and we got the loader on it. We did not get a backhoe for it. We have pallet forks, we have a bucket, we have a bunch of attachments for the back. You've seen the tiller, you've seen the wood chipper. It's what you would consider, I guess, a compact tractor. The 33 horsepower is what the L stands for. It is not turbo, it's naturally aspirated. It is four-wheel drive. And it's a hydrostatic, which in the beginning I was like anti-hydrostatic. I'm like, well, I want a standard transmission, I want a clutch, that's what a tractor is supposed to have. But after actually using it for 6 years for what we use it for, the hydrostatic is so nice, because if you want to ease into something, you can slow right down, you're not spinning, you're not doing any of that. You can kind of really control what you're doing. But then as soon as you say you're picking up a log, as soon as you get the log on the forks, you can step on it and take right off and get back up to full speed. You're not shifting gears, you're not pushing clutches, you're not riding the clutch to get a bucket into a bank of dirt. So for us, that's been a real asset. I think if you were doing a lot of like bush hogging or haying or something like that, the standard might be nicer because you can put it in gear, you can wind the throttle up and it just goes, you're not standing on the pedal. But I do think you can get, in some of the bigger models, a cruise control. So this tractor has around 600 hours on it. Problems that we've had with it. First, right off the bat, let's just get that right out there. Have we really had any problems? So the one thing that we've had that is not self-inflicted, let me put it that way, is there's a oil cooler under the hood, and we'll open the hood in a minute and show you. But there's an oil cooler under the hood that cools the hydrostatic hydraulic oil. And one of the lines started leaking. And when I started tearing into it, that line was just all dry rotted and cracked everywhere. Only line on the tractor like that. So I'm gonna guess it was just a poor quality line from the beginning. And luck of the draw, I was able to go to Messics.com, order the line, it showed up a couple days later, and it was a quick, easy job to change. The other problem we've had with it is cold weather starting. So we live in Maine, it's cold. It doesn't like to crank over when it's cold. It cranks real slow. One of the things we've done is we have put a bigger battery in it, and my next step is bigger battery cables. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to open the hood, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So over here, here's our battery. You'll see we put a bigger Napa battery in it. But you see the size of the cables. They're pretty tiny. And this one just grounds to the frame here, which is normal. And this one goes all the way back to the starter. So I think probably one of the things we'll do is change those out to larger cables to see if we can get a little more oomph to the starter. The next thing we'll probably do is put a block heater in it. They do not come with a block heater by default, at least around here, which kind of surprised me. I don't know if maybe there's an issue with the starter, but I don't think so. I think it's probably just the way these are designed. But that's the only two issues we've had that are not self-inflicted. I can tell you that if you're using the pallet forks to clear brush and trees and probably more stuff than you should really be doing with the tractor, every now and then you can get a stick, a big limb, 2 or 3 inch limb, come through the pallet forks and pull one of your quick attaches here. And if you don't notice it, and the pallet forks comes off this one, and you start moving, all of a sudden those things get way out of time with each other. So I've done that twice. I've had that happen twice, where one of these is tipped forward like 5 or 6 inches more than the other one, and nothing is broke. This rod here, of course, bends, it twists, and all I've done is I've gone over to a big tree and put the one that's the farthest forward against the tree and pushed against it with the hydrostatic until they look right. And what you do is you just pull them back, and if they both bottom at the same time, one doesn't move a little more, you've got it. If not, you just keep tweaking it until you got it. So that's the only thing that I can mention there, is that if you're planning on doing a lot of land clearing, a lot of like just really grabbing brush, shoving it out into the woods kind of real aggressively, you might want to think about a hydraulic grapple, something that's a little bit more made for the job than pallet forks. That's the only other issue we've had with it that is not, those three issues. Other than that, the thing has just run great. It's done what it's supposed to do. We have tire chains for it that we put on in the winter so we can plow with it. We do have a 7.5 foot plow we put on there. We did end up having to put wheel spacers on the back because the tire chains didn't have enough room right here without the wheel spacers. And the company we bought the tractor from filled the tires with beet juice so that we have that extra ballast. Because I will tell you, if you're not familiar with tractors, if you haven't run tractors much, which I hadn't when I bought this, these loaders have more power than the tractor has weight. So you can get yourself in kind of a pickle quickly if you're not paying attention. And you can carry more weight or pick up more weight than you really think you should, and you can have a back tire off the ground. So if you're going to be doing something like shoveling up wet, heavy loam or lifting heavy pallets of stuff, you want an attachment on the back that weighs a lot. You don't want no attachment, or like the rake. The rake doesn't weigh much. We have a weight box, we have a tiller, something like that you can put on there, and then it'll be more stable. It is pretty easy to get yourself in trouble and roll one of these over with weight on the forks of the bucket. That's why we always say keep everything close to the ground. If you've got a real heavy load and you got to travel with it, keep it close to the ground, and that way if it starts to tip the tractor over, the load's going to touch the ground. Everything's going to stop and sit there while you figure out what you want to do. If you had that load up in the air 2 feet, when it comes down, you may be on the point of recovery on the rest of the tractor. So that's just something to keep in mind if you've never used one of these before. You do want the ballast in the rear. If your dealer doesn't by default load your tires, ask for it and make sure you get a weight box or something for a little weight. This tractor at the pallet forks, right against the forks, supposedly will lift around 2,000 pounds. I would say that in nature, my experience is around 1,200 pounds seems to be about where it's comfortable. We get big round bales, as you've probably seen in some of our videos. Now I'm gonna say they weigh around 1,000 pounds, and the tractor handles those just perfectly fine, comfortable as can be. But there have been some battery loads and some pallets of solar modules. I think we may have done a video early on where you saw me coming down the driveway of a full pallet of solar modules with the back tires off the ground, and it's like, everything's just kind of balanced. So you really, you have to think about that. Think about what size tractor you want for what you're doing. This is a fairly large tractor if you're just using it around the house to pick up leaves and brush and mow some grass and things like that. If you're using it for anything heavy duty, this may not be big enough. So you really have to look at that and say, what are my goals? What am I trying to do? Go in and talk to your tractor dealer. Try to talk to a couple different brands. Go talk to your John Deere dealer, your Kubota dealer, your Coyote dealer, whatever. Get a feel for it. I mean, the reason I ended up with an orange tractor is actually very, very simple. I went into the city one day and I wanted to look at tractors and I wanted to decide what I wanted. My first stop was at the John Deere dealer local to us, and they were just not at all even nice or helpful to me. They were almost like they were irritated I was there, because I think maybe my mistake was I asked about a used tractor up front first, and I think they really wanted to sell me a new tractor. And I don't know if they felt I couldn't afford it, or I wasn't serious or what, but they just didn't really even want to give me the time of day. So then I went down to the, not Coyote, it's the other red tractor, I can't remember the brand. It's a kind of an off-brand anyways. No, it wasn't, it was Massey Ferguson, that's right, sorry. I went to Massey Ferguson, and they were super nice. The only tractor they had there that was in the size range I was looking for had a backhoe on it, and I really didn't want a backhoe, because I knew that the backhoes on the tractors just weren't really that efficient and versatile. So I'm like, I really want a tractor. And kind of saw what I wanted, kind of, looked at it, got some opinions, got some thoughts. And then I ended up at the Kubota dealer, these are all three within a mile of each other. And when I got there, the parts guy said, well, the sales guy just stepped out for lunch. The other guy's out on sick leave. She'll be right back. So I was just poking around, looking around, and the salesman came in, and he had his lunch, literally had his lunch. He was going to eat at his desk. And he sets it down. He goes, well, let me take care of you. I'm like, no, go eat your lunch. I mean, if you're going to put your lunch aside for me, I can wait. Anybody should eat their warm lunch while it's warm. But He was just super nice, super helpful, no stress, no pushiness, no anything. And he took me out, he spent probably an hour with me, let me try out tractors, giving me opinions, talking about the different model tires that you can put on it. You know, there's turf tires, there's tractor tires, there's the ag tires, I guess they call them, like this one has. And really kind of helping me through what I really wanted in a tractor. And when we got to that point and we had it designed, he really just said, you know, just let me know if I can ever be of assistance. He didn't even say, do you want a price on it? He didn't push me into, you know, do you want to take one home today or anything? And that's kind of what rolled me into the Kubota, honestly. I think any brand tractor, you're going to do okay. Obviously, if you can get John Deere or Kubota, I think is up there now with the John Deere, parts availability will always be, you know, there for you, right? I mean, you can go into your local John Deere dealer and say, I've got a, you know, 19 whatever John Deere Model A or whatever it is, and you can probably still get parts for it. It's kind of like Case, Cat. Those major brands, they keep parts available almost forever. There is one concern with like the Coyote and the other off-brand Chinese tractors is, you know, will parts actually be available in 20 years? But I do think Kubota is there now where their brand has been around forever and will always have parts available. So at the end of the day, it really is about getting that feeling for what, you know, what company, what salesperson is going to, you know, treats you the best. When you go in and, you know, you're looking at a tractor, there's a few core functions you want. Like when you get into the bigger ones with the hydrostatic, you can get some remote controls on the back where you can actually move the tractor to hook up an attachment, little things like that. Ergonomics, what are you going to be doing with it most? In our case, it's everything. We don't farm, well, we do farm, but not like farming where we're hauling great big planters or anything like that. We don't bush hog a lot. You know, it's a little bit of everything all the time. So this tractor really was pretty versatile for us. But yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. The L3301, about 600 hours, 6.5 years old. Really never had any problem with it other than this one line that goes to this cooler right here. And like I say, the battery wasn't a problem. It just didn't want to start when it was cold. It rolled over really slow. So we had a bigger battery we put in it. That's kind of it. You guys can come around. I'll give you a tour just real quickly. You know, again, you got your clutch. For those of you that are familiar with a tractor, you know what it is. If not, this will disengage the transmission from the engine. So if you're even with the hydrostatic, you can still use it. You don't use it much. You have your diff lock right here. When you step down on that, it physically locks both rear tires right together. So under normal conditions, just like your car or your truck, when it's all-wheel drive, you get one rear tire and one front tire. But you can lock that and do both. You get your full drive lever. You've got your high, low, and medium speed. Even though you got hydrostatic, you can still select speeds. You have your PTO over there. And you have your 3-point hitch, raise and lower. And then probably most predominantly for those that are familiar for standard, on hydrostatic you have your forward reverse pedal right there. So you push down on the forward, the harder you push, the faster you go, and the same in reverse. And then your brake pedals can be coupled or decoupled. So just like, you know, any old farm tractor you're used to, if you want to turn really quickly, you can step on just this brake and turn the wheel all the way left, and it'll kind of drag the front end around with you a little bit. And then when you come around to the 3-point hitch, pretty standard stuff, just like any old tractor. You've got your drawbar down in there, you got your PTO, you got your arms, and your top link. We did not have a quick attach on this. We may at some point, but it is can be kind of a pain hooking up to attachments sometimes. But with two people, it's really not that bad. And you see the wheel spacers in there I was talking about to move the wheels out. Those shiny aluminum pieces in there. We had to purchase those because as you can see, those are about 2.5 inches. And if you look right in through here, you'll see right in here, we only have about 3 inches. So a big ice chain's on there. You just didn't have the clearance that you needed to make things work. You come around here, probably if I had one complaint, and it shouldn't be a complaint because I've used this tractor in some pretty severe brush moving, just shoving stuff back out of my way, but the hydraulic filters down here exposed. So you can see that hydraulic filter right there. And there's another one on the other side. those seem like they would be pretty easy to damage, although I've never damaged one. And they also seem like they'd be pretty easy to build a skid plate over, which I have never done. The bucket loader arms, they come off. So there's a couple pins here that you get the loader set right. There's some little legs you put down. You slide the pins out and then you roll this forward, and then all your lines uncouple up here. And you can take the loader right off, which makes it easier to work on if you got to work on. But other than that, it's a basic tractor. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell on the L3301. Here's the diesel particulate filter I was talking about. It's actually a muffler, but it also catches all the diesel particulates. And it's got some sensors in here that measure back pressure. And at a certain time, it will decide it needs to do what they call a regen. It'll flash some lights on the dash. So one of the differences, and this is a little bit of a struggle for me to learn, even though I never really used a tractor a lot, was when you get into these newer tier 4 engines or whatever they call them with the diesel particulate filters, if you're always running the throttle up around 2,000 RPMs, it'll run, the exhaust will run hotter, it'll stay clean. The first year I had it, I couldn't get in that habit. I'd putz around at like, 1,000 RPMs, and it would want to regen about every 8 or 9 hours, it seemed like. Now that we get in the habit of running it that way, if you're going to be, when you get out, get it running, you run it up to about 2,000 RPMs, and you just run the tractor that way. I think it's maybe regen 3 times in the last 100-ish hours. It just doesn't do it a lot anymore now that we've learned how to run it. So when you get into these new, environmentally friendly tractors, that's the way to do it, is to run your throttle up a little more, keep it working hot, and it will actually do a regen while you're working, if you're working. So you'll see the light flash, and as long as you've got the RPMs above 2,000 and the engine's up to operating temperature, it will just go on and do its own regen right while you're working it. You can actually tell it to do it, like if you're doing something and you're done and it's saying it wants a regen, you can push a button, it'll run the throttle up itself by the computer, blow a bunch of black crappy junk out of it, and you can't see, blah 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 blah, because it's okay, that doesn't count when it does it during that. As long as it's clean when it's running normal times, we can ignore that regen, right? I don't know, I rant on that because I have an old diesel pickup that uses half the fuel of the new pickups, and yada yada yada. That's a whole video in itself. We won't go down that road. But that's about it on the L3301. We're happy with it. We would do it again. Would we buy a bigger one? I don't know. I mean, now that we have the excavator, they kind of complement each other. If we've got something really heavy to lift, we use the excavator. So, like I say, it does what we need it to do. We've had no major problems with it. We're going to go ahead and service it before we leave for Florida, so it's ready to plow snow when we get back. So we'll bring you along for that video here in a little bit. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.